Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Walters with BigFanboy.com, and sitting with me today, this is a true honor. I'm here with the great Rupert Everett, and I'm especially pleased that I'm here for this film because I think this is a marvelous film.
Oh, thank you very
and
much.
I know it's been a great labor of love for you. A great many years have gone into this. You're certainly no stranger to Oscar Wilde. You've performed Oscar Wilde on stage, Importance of Being Earnest, things over the years that have definitely fed into this journey. But I have to ask, I mean, what was the moment where you realized that you had to do this? Like, how long ago was that?
Well, I think in about the year 2006, 2007, what had happened was my acting career kind of dried up. And I thought, I've got to try and find some way of keeping it going. And I'd written a couple of books, and my idea had always been to try and segue that writing into writing a screenplay and creating work for myself. You know, I think these days as an actor, you have to be prepared to look all the way around you for opportunity and be proactive, because otherwise the business kind of shoots on past you. And so I decided I'd write a screenplay, and it seemed to me, just because of having done so much Wilde being so important really to me personally, you know, as a gay man in show business, for example, and even my experience as a child listening to Wilde for the first time with my mother, it all seemed to come together, and it felt like that was the person I should write about. And then little by little I kind of came up with the idea. The other three films about Wilde that have been made all deal with his time as a very successful man in London. So I felt that I should try and move on to the virgin territory, so to speak. And also, because for me, his exile is the most inspiring part. I feel that the other films kind of bottle out in a way of showing what society actually did to this man just for the fact that he was homosexual, because it wasn't just about prison and hard labor. It was about this so-called liberty after prison, which was really another form of imprisonment.
Absolutely, and I think that it's an important message today because the words of Wilde, he always was strong about being yourself, and it's important to be who you are and not shield that.
Right.
And you being able to show not only that side of him, but also the side of the persecution of what he went through, because we still experience that even today. I mean, as far as we've come, we still have a long way to go. So I think it's very timely in today's kind of political environment to have a movie like this that shows you that side of things.
I think so too. It's interesting because also just in terms of around the world, it's only really halfway across the spectrum in terms of you know, the global gay experience. And also the thing that's very inspiring to me about him is that in this disastrous exile, he was never a victim either. He was a kind of he challenged the world still, and he carved out his own constitution again on the street corner this time, and he kind of replaced the royalty and the stars and the aristocrats with a new world, a new court of lowlifes, of petty criminals and rent boys, and he retained his sense of humor and his curiosity and his appetite for life, and I find that also incredibly touching and very inspiring.
One of the things that you show in the film, which I particularly appreciated, and I'm sure you can relate to as a performer, is that Wilde seemed like he was happiest when he was in front of an audience. And he seemed like he was happiest when he was entertaining. And to take that away from him and to take away his ability to do that was probably the most soul-crushing thing for him. I'm sure that in some way that you could probably latch on to that and think, what would it be like to all of a sudden to not be able to entertain people, to not be able to be who you are, and celebrate your talent.
Or not to have a career as an actor. You know,
Yes, yes.
I think he's doing precisely what I was kind of talking about in a way. He was finding new ways to be entertaining, and if it was on the top of a table, singing or telling, you know, little flower sellers stories, then that's what it was. And he accepted the reduction and made the most of it. And I think that's a great secret in life, in a way.
It's a beautiful film, not just in the story, but in the aesthetic of it as well. You shot this in Italy and Germany, I believe?
In Germany, Belgium, Italy, and France, all over the place.
It's such beautiful settings. And I would imagine that was, from being first-time director for you, that was probably great to show up in those places and see just how authentic it looked, you know, and for what you were trying to do.
Well, it was the challenge really for what I was trying to do, because I'd worked a lot in Italy, and I loved that the whole texture of Italian design and Italian lighting. And but the most of the money for the movie came out of Germany, out of Bavaria, where Oscar Wilde never went, and also where the architecture is really completely different to any French architecture. So it was quite a challenge, and I think that was one of the things that was most exciting about it in a way, trying to find a way of presenting Paris and Naples, the interiors in Germany. And eventually I found these 3 ruined castles in an area of Bavaria called Franconia, on the Czech border, and in those 3 castles, I found every single room and restaurant and hotel room and favela, everything for the whole film.
It was like a built-in soundstage.
Yeah, like perfect. A soundstage, yeah.
That's great. The one scene I really wanted to talk to you about because it really resonated with me, the scene when you're thrown in prison and getting the hair cut off and everything. That's all real, isn't it?
That's
like,
real.
So you
yeah.
actually doing
I did it, yeah.
And I would imagine that allows you to really kind of put yourself in that moment of what he must have felt like to just be completely stripped of his humanity and stripped of his appearance. And I mean, it's such a terrible thing at the time for him.
It's an extraordinary scene, and it's I mean it obviously happened, and it was the scene we shot first on the first day of the movie, because after that I had wigs on, and it was an incredible thing to do. And a lot of the scenes that actually happened to him, for example, being spat on by the commuters in Clapham Junction Station, all these things actually happened.
The boys attacking him. And
the boys attacking him, and all these things actually happened. So, there are lots of quite heavy things in the movie. The shooting was strange in a way.
I saw you were doing an interview yesterday on Channel 8, and you were talking about working with a lot of the other actors who are all friends of yours. Did that allow you to kind of, especially coming to this being your first directorial narrative feature, did that allow you a little bit more freedom to be able to say, these are more like friends that I'm working with as opposed to just actors I'm trying to tell what to do, and having those experiences together?
I think they were incredibly generous with me, because I didn't want it to be a kind of free-for-all. I was quite rigorous about the text and the way I wanted the text to be played. I think, without all of them really giving themselves to me in that way, I'd never pulled it together, because they were all so amazing. Even the people playing the small parts are incredibly overqualified, actually, most of them. And I think they just make the whole thing so complete. And even down to, or up to, the Neapolitan fishermen, all of them they're amazing actors, all of them. And so I was just very lucky to get that much detail.
I'm a big fan of character actors, and so I definitely appreciated that. Like, even the hotel clerk was terrific.
Yeah, amazing.
The way he says "wild," it was just so perfect. But yeah, I love when you see great guys like that kind of peppered in throughout the movie.
And you think, and that's how another way films often fall apart, when you've concentrated all the talent on the top half, and the bottom half it goes off into something indistinct. And I was just very lucky, even with the little boy, Matteo, who played Jean. He was just a sensational little actor. And so I was just very lucky with all that.
Is it hard these days in the entertainment industry to get a movie like this made that tells not only an important story, but tells it in a way that it's not a very glamorous story. It's not a happy story, but there's so much truth and importance in there. Is it hard to get a movie like that made today?
I think all independent cinema is hard to finance, because it's in the old days you could do things much cheaper, and everything's incredibly expensive now, and there's very little financial outlets to go to, and it's difficult to attract the audience. They've now been weaned and addicted to huge Marvel comics and big budget movies, and so the independent cinema has been kind of slightly strangled out of existence. But there's still amazing things being made, and I think the fact that they all have such intense birthing processes, as random as fish getting up water and all. I think that probably in the end makes them sharper and better, maybe, because you see a lot of great independent cinema. Actually, there's film after film that's really wonderful and extraordinary, and I think most of them probably would say they have an amazingly tough journey to get to being made.
Yeah. There's already been some talk about possible Oscar nominations, things like that. People are really recognizing your performance in this movie and how wonderful it is. What does that mean when you hear that? When you hear things like that?
Well, I think it's just it's not worth dwelling on too much, because at the moment I'm just trying to promote the movie and get people to go and see it. And what's really exciting and the real prize in the end, and I think everyone has to hold on to this, is just anyone that you meet and who's enjoyed the movie, because that's really what it's all about. And it's not about anything else actually than people enjoying the movie. So anyone who enjoys the movie, for me, is kind of the Oscar.
Yeah, well, and I never got a sense that you were making this for awards, so I certainly didn't mean to imply that. I think that you made this because it was obviously very personal to you.
I think it's just not worth thinking about it too much, because quite probably I won't be, considered for the Oscars, so it's not really worth thinking.
Well, don't say that.
No, but I mean, it's just as possible as being considered.
Right.
And really, it's not as important. Or it's not. The prize really is anyone who enjoys it. That's all I think.
Sure.
In the end.
Well, yeah, and it's also about getting the word out and making sure that people have an opportunity to see this. And I think this is the kind of film that could be very educational in a day when we don't often have those types of movies, like you said. I did want to ask you, what's up next for you? I know that you're working on Name of the Rose.
I've just finished that, The Name of the Rose, and
possibly more directing in your future.
I'm trying to set up another film now, and I'll see how that goes. And basically, just trying to stay engaged with the business and keep going. It's a fascinating time to be in show business. Really, it should be, and I'd like to be a part of that.
I know I'm going to butcher this, but I think Wilde had a great quote when he was released from prison, where he said something to the effect of, "To deny one's own experience is to put a lie into one's own lips. It is nothing less than a denial of the soul," which I think is a great way to encapsulate this movie.
Right.
What do you want people to take away from this film? What's the message you want people to take from this?
I think the only thing I can, my enthusiasm and my fascination with Wilde is what made me try and make the film. And I think you can only hope that affection and feeling somehow manages to get across the footlights and into the hearts and heads of the audience, and that enthusiasm will be felt by them. Really, I think for me it's an important story, even though it's a kind of cartoon story because it's a 19th century story. It's really a story, a universal story in one sense. It's about bigotry and being yourself, and freedom and human rights and all those kind of things. So, and it's also a wonderful bit of history, an extraordinary bit of history. So I think it's for me, that's fascinated me, and you can only keep your fingers crossed and hope that it fascinates someone else too. That's why the prize is, in the end, when someone is turned on by it or enjoys it, it's as good as it gets, really.
And we have to wrap up, and I'll wrap up with that. Being able to go out there and talk to audiences.
It's great. It's the best part, actually.
Yeah, what has been one of the most special pieces of feedback you've received from the film?
Well, just in general, it's not the specific, it's just the generality of being there and really, because that's what it's about, the audience. It's only about the audience. And so getting a chance to be in touch with the audience is a new thing, because in the old days you didn't so much go out and meet the audiences, and I think it's a great thing. It really makes it worthwhile and exciting and dynamic, and you realise kind of what you're in it for.
Yeah. The film is The Happy Prince. It is now playing at Angelica. We'll have information down below where you can see it. Rupert Everett, thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much.